The sound of Plants vs. Zombies in the morning. So peaceful. Hey everyone, how you doing? You know, isn't it odd how some games feel inherently weird to play without sound? Like, maybe it's just me, but there's some titles I simply can't enjoy without hearing the audio of the games themselves. It just throws me off a bit. One of the biggest examples that comes to mind for me is Fortnite, a game that I discuss a little bit on this channel. Now, when you view a clip like this in a video, where I'm talking over my footage, you may not think much of it. It might even seem normal in a sense, because I'm giving you commentary and it's just a visual to show while I'm explaining my thoughts. But what if I stayed silent and cut the music? Doesn't it feel wrong now? It's like you're playing the game, but you can't hear what's going on. It might especially feel weird for you if your screen looks like this, and you have a controller on while watching on an Xbox or something along those lines. It just feels off. And Plants vs. Zombies 1, despite being a rather simple game that may not seem like it needs audio, almost feels wrong to play without it. Why is that? Well, I believe this has to do with how the game processes a specific usage of audio, that being audio cues. For those unfamiliar with the term, audio cues are essentially what they sound like. They're auditory cues that typically tell you something, whether it be what type of weapon someone's using in a shooter game, or it's something like a warning if you're making too much noise in a horror game. Regardless of the intention, these are still audio cues that give you information and understanding on what's happening at any given time. And Plants vs. Zombies 1 is surprisingly a very audio cue based game, despite it not seeming that way on the surface level. We'll take a very extreme example here, and observe the fog levels towards the end of the adventure. In these levels, there's a thick layer of fog that blocks all vision of the front view tiles of the lawn, which can be very problematic if you're unprepared for what's to come. But the game gives you a few ways to fight the horde with this limitation in mind. One of these is simply stalling for time, and waiting for a zombie to pop out by placing your defense towards the back and letting them handle the horde when they see them. Now, that's fine and all, but there's a much smarter way to figure out what you're facing, which is the audio cues. Take this example here. It's the beginning of the level, and I'm placing suntrooms down. Then I hear this. This means that a zombie is in one of the lanes, but which one? Well, we can immediately narrow down our picks to 3. Why is that? To start, 2 of these lanes are pool lanes in the fog levels, and you would also hear this sound effect accompanied by a groan if there was any zombie entering the pool. On top of this, the very top lane of the setting makes zombies' heads just slightly poke out of the fog if you're paying attention. So the only 3 lanes where the zombie would be are lanes 2, 5, and 6. And as this world goes along, every single zombie introduced has an audio cue to signal what you're facing too. Balloon zombies have an unmistakable inflating sound. Digger zombies have a distinct burrowing sound. And who could forget the Jack-in-the-Box zombies with their music box song too? Everything in this setting works very well, and it comes together to make an experience you probably never even questioned. Granted, the same series of levels can be absolutely cheesed with Blover, but I digress. Most of the choices made here sound-wise were very clever, and you could tell the team behind this game knew what they were doing. As a matter of fact, most of the game uses similar audio cues to signal the player for various zombies and attacks. One of my favorites is the iconic Yeehaw from the Bungee Zombie, which gives you just enough time to expect an attack. Something similar happens with many other zombies too, like knowing when you broke a newspaper zombie's, well, newspaper, and even situations where you know zombonis are about to enter on the screen. It all just works. You don't think about it much because the game doesn't often focus on what you're hearing, since there's plenty of visual cues too. But when Plants vs. Zombies 1 leans into its audio, it really leans into the audio. One of my favorite minigames for this is Invisible, which turns every zombie invisible, and it forces you to listen and pay attention to the game's visuals and audio. You don't really know how close any zombie is until you see a pea hit them, and likewise, you also don't know what lanes they're in until you use an ice room, where every lawn-walking zombie will then be exposed with the ice marks on the ground. And believe me, there's plenty of audio cues too. They come in handy when you're facing a conehead or buckethead zombie, as you'll hear what armor they have when they're hit. It's a very unique minigame, and it utilizes nothing but cues to signal what the player's next move should be. It almost reminds me of playing a FNAF game in a way. FNAF 4 especially does these cues well, where in that game, you have to listen to and watch everything around you. If you're peeking through one of the doors next to your bedroom, you need to listen for breathing. And likewise, you hear various sounds and see various animatronics inside the room too, in order to figure out what could be lurking. Whether you like this type of gaming or not, it can't be debated that it's clever game design, and it keeps the player on their toes for every passing second. Now, obviously, Plants vs. Zombies is not FNAF, but I assume you get the point here. I just find the audio cues in Plants vs. Zombies 1 to be fascinating, and honestly, kind of genius in execution. The team behind this game handled the design of it so well that it feels nearly seamless when you're in a live session of playing. You truly don't know how good it all comes together until you look back on what you did in retrospect. It's smart, simply put. But unfortunately, it doesn't feel like every PVZ game followed this trend. Sure, the shooter games have their fair share of audio cues, which we can use a very good example for. Imagine you're near a capture point in a Suburbanation match, and you hear this. That's a cue that not only was there a chili beam bomb explosion far from you, but there's also somebody playing pea shooter on the map as well. Now, what if you went to capture a point and you heard this? This sound tells us three things. 1, it's a sombrero beam bomb, as indicated by the pausing and the hissing. 2, it's nearing our location, possibly somewhere on a rooftop. And 3, you better get out of there now. To be fair, there's not many abilities and situations where audible cues are like this in the shooter games, but it does happen from time to time. But overall, these games more so rely on visuals than anything else, which is completely reasonable, seeing as how there's spawning icons for every character type in the first 2 shooter games, as well as there being character outlines in Battle for Neighborville. Regardless of the game you look at, visual cues tend to play the bigger role, which is fine. Though in cases of games that are closer to the style of Plants vs. Zombies 1, this excuse doesn't really hold the same weight. Plants vs. Zombies 2 is a very interesting example, as theoretically, it should have more audio cues to signal various zombies, but it doesn't. The game's ambush waves all happen simultaneously with no warning. Most zombies also have no sound effects before entering the screen, and there's no particular gimmicks here where you're tested audibly. Now, this is okay because Plants vs. Zombies 2 was designed to be a mobile game first and foremost. And considering how most people don't exactly play this game with audio anyways, it's pretty reasonable to not test a player in such a way. But with that being said, I do still find this to be rather unfortunate, and you could probably understand why. My overall thoughts on this topic are quite simple. I enjoy Plants vs. Zombies 1's audio cues quite a lot, and revisiting this game to get a lot of footage for a recent video I did made me remember just how strong some aspects of this game are. The audio cues are just another reason for why this game took off in the way it did, and I hope this video helped you understand why I feel the way I do about this aspect of sound design for the titular title. It's pretty solid, that's all I have to say. And with that, I'll be ending this video here. Thank you all so much for watching until the end, I really do appreciate it. This video came together like glue in my head. I can't believe this topic hasn't really been discussed by anybody in a video before. I may not be a sound design expert, but I hope my thoughts make enough sense for you guys to get what I mean. But with that being said, what do you think about PVZ1's audio cues? Do you agree with what I said? Do you not? Tell me your thoughts and more in the comments down below. And of course, I'd like to give one big shout out to my extra YSI channel members, those being Dan B, Dust Belief Papyrus, Envious, Glitch in the Code 867, Nicholas Vankowski, Song, and Johnny Homeowner. Alongside my one normal member, thank you all so much for your support on my channel, y'all rock. And now, as for me here, I'm gonna go play Night 6 of FNAF 4 with no audio. Wish me luck, and peace.
Okay, so the first night is never usually that bad in any of the games, so I'll play through.